Dead's Claim. The moon lay lurking among the clouds. Hidden in the absence of the moonlight were teenage girls laughing uncontrollably in the cemetery. They had emptied bottle after bottle of alcohol all night, and Nellie's head was beginning to spin. She rested on a headstone to steady herself. "One more," Kyra urged from behind her. "I have class in the morning," Nell moaned back. "That hasn't stopped you before," Darlene smirked back. They all laughed. The sound echoed through the desolate cemetery. "Why did you even drag us all the way out here, Kyra?" Nell asked. "Because the last time we tried to do anything fun, your brother ratted us out. To here, the dead can't tell anyone. Besides, I heard stories about this place. I wanted us to see the cherry blossom tree. They say it blooms all year." Kyra then stumbled around inside her purse and turned on the flashlight on her phone. "It should be somewhere around here." The girls found it near the center of the cemetery. Nell had an uncomfortable feeling when she saw the tree. It was immense, with twisted branches reaching all over and roots burrowing deep into the ground. Nell stumbled on a root poking up from the earth as they approached it. "They say it gets life from the souls of the dead. That's why it always blooms," Kyra said, trying her best to sound mysterious. Nell smiled. She looked more closely at the tree. It really is beautiful, Nell thought. She took a tentative step closer to it, unsure whether to continue. As she advanced towards the base of the tree, she spotted a particularly beautiful blossom, growing just low enough within arm's reach. It had pink petals with flecks of red, a pattern Nell had never seen before. She started to pick it up from the branch. "Nell," Kyra said, "the person who told me about the tree warned me not to take anything from here. We do not steal from the dead." Nell should have been afraid, but she was drunk and mesmerized by the vivid bud. A surge of confidence bolted through her. She reached up and plucked the flower, half expecting a ghost to come jumping at her. But nothing happened. She smiled at Kyra. "You see, the dead have no claim," Nell said with a grin. She glanced at her watch. "It's already getting late. We should go." Nell placed the bud in her hair, and the three girls walked off into the night, stumbling over every other headstone, back home to sleep off the alcohol. The following day, Nell woke up with a massive headache and the flower still in her hair. She felt around for it and removed it to inspect it again. It really was beautiful. She wondered if she could somehow preserve it. She cut her inspection short when she looked at the time. Her class was in 30 minutes. She jumped out of bed and hurried to the bathroom to get ready. While showering, she noticed that her drain was beginning to clog. The water rose to her ankles, swishing and splashing as she moved. Nell bent down to find that it was nearly blocked with hair. She cursed at the sight of it. She was not ready for the hassle of unclogging the shower. She made a mental note to address it when she got back and rushed out the door to school. After a hectic day, she returned to her apartment just after 7 o'clock. She crashed into her bed, tired beyond words. Her eyes were about to close when she heard a noise coming from the bathroom. Her eyes snapped back open. The sound was chilling, a distant gurgling and bubbling that sent shivers down the spine. She walked on unsteady legs to the bathroom, peeking into it to see that there was no one there. Her heart played a frantic beat in her chest. Nell moved closer to the source of the sound. She saw that it was coming from her drain. Deep down into the darkness of it, she saw that there was even more hair in the drain now, thicker and longer than she remembered from that morning. Her stomach lurched, compelling her to vomit. The scene grossed her out, and the color of the hair was off. It seemed so lifeless, washed out a shade darker than her own natural hair. A mass of thick black hair was sticking out of the drain now, and it looked wet and slimy. Nell rushed to the kitchen and searched through her utensils for the most appropriate one. With Nellie's parents on vacation for the next 2 weeks, and this being the only bathroom, she had to take care of it herself. She eventually decided on a knife. It looked small enough to fit into the drain, she thought. The sound was still lingering in the bathroom when she came back. Nell saw that there was even more hair sticking out from the drain now. A strange feeling came over her. She could swear she sensed the presence of another person in the room. Nell felt a chill as she neared the drain. It gurgled as she approached. Nell stuck the knife into the channel as far as she could. She began to pull out the hair little by little. It was stubborn, resisting the pull at first, but she kept on digging. Slowly, more of the hair came out. Nell saw that the strands were very long. Very, very long. She kept her own hair at a short length. She was convinced now that the hair didn't belong to her. Finally, she was able to pull it all out. She grabbed onto it with both hands, and with one full tug, she heard a horrible tearing noise, and a substantial piece came out. She observed it and saw flaking skin dangling on the ends of the hairs, as if they had been pulled out from someone's scalp. The bits of flesh were tinted with blood. The blood looked old and coagulated. Her mouth filled with vomit. She dropped the hair in disgust and sprang to the toilet, emptying the contents of her stomach into it. The dreadful noise continued to erupt from the drain. Nell got closer and peeked into the tub. She couldn't see anything but darkness down there. She moved closer again, peering down at the ominous hole. Closer and closer, she saw a mass deep inside the drain, but couldn't make out the shape. She stared intently. Every instinct in her body was screaming at Nell, warning her of some invisible threat. But, just like the flower, Nell was mesmerized. She couldn't leave. She leaned even closer still. The mass moved. Nell shrieked as she saw an eye open from inside the drain. Her scream was loud enough to wake the entire neighborhood. She tried to scramble back. She slipped in the shower and crashed through the sliding glass door. She tried to make a retreat, but some of the hair stretched out from inside the drain. It latched firmly around her wrist, preventing her from going anywhere. Blood was now cascading from her body as pieces of glass had cut deep into her sides. She screamed again, trying desperately to yank the hair off of her. She reached for the knife, but it wasn't strong enough to cut through the fine hair. Next, another strand shot to her leg. They were as thick as cords. She strained against them, but they seemed unbreakable. The strand wrapped around her legs, twirling and spinning like a snake. The hair began to pull her onto the floor with surprising strength. She pulled against it in vain. When her hand hit the drain, Nell thought that the worst had passed, but the hair kept pulling with even greater force, pressing her hand against the drain with immense pressure. Her fingers were first to crack. Next, her wrist gave way. She heard the crunch of her arm being broken. She nearly passed out from the pain. "Help me," she screamed, but no one could hear. She shouted through the blinding pain. The drain hole seemed to expand to accommodate her, but not nearly enough. The hair continued to pull her in, twisting her arm out of proportion until it was all the way into her shoulder. From deep inside, she heard a voice speak. "Thief." That was all it said. Nell realized what was going on. Her mind snapped to the flower. "We do not steal from the dead," Kyra's voice echoed in her mind. Soon the drain engulfed her, dragging her full body in. More hairs erupted from the drain to pull her in each time her frame got stuck. The sound of each of her bones crunching was sickening. The bathroom was painted red with the splash of blood and broken glass, yet her body was nowhere to be found. 2 days later, Kyra came to visit Nell. She had not seen her since the night at the cemetery. She knocked on the door for several minutes, but no answer. Next, Kyra went to campus asking her friends and teachers if they had seen her. No one had. Kyra was beginning to panic. Overwhelmed with anxiety and desperate for answers, she ran back to the cemetery where she had last seen Nellie. She ran through the rows of headstones, heading closer to the center of the cemetery, all the while shouting Nell's name. Exhausted, Kyra finally stopped under the cherry blossom tree. She rested her back on the tree and tried to steady her breathing. Unable to rationalize what had happened to Nell, Kyra considered calling Nell's parents to confess. That was when she looked down at the base of the tree. A single blossom lay on the ground. It looked just like the one Nell had picked. It was spotted with even more red speckles than before. Kyra bent down to view it, and the red speckles smeared against her fingertips. The sensation of shock overtook her when she realized it was blood.